All righty. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fuck Calories. I'm Dr. Soleil, and that's Dr. Sarah. Um,
Hi.
so today is going to be a kind of a heavy topic because I've been talking to my therapist and talking to her about my um, I guess change of thoughts, right, around my weight and all of the baggage that I've come along with me, right, with yo-yo dieting, etc. And what was interesting is she actually challenged me to think about the first time weight was ever brought up, right, to me, or when
Mm,
did I ever feel shameful for this? And I was like, first time. And I was like, okay, that's going to take some homework. So that was my homework, and I started thinking about it. And I came back very surprised because the first thought that I had about someone talking about my weight, either around me or to me, I still remember this like it was yesterday and what I was wearing and everything. I was 7 years old.
wow.
So that blew my mind because
Yeah,
I've been thinking, right, this whole time that like my weight issues were happening when I was in high school, right? And I
great.
was trying to, fit in and look a
Peer
certain way,
pressure
and I just
and
never did.
yeah,
Exactly. And luckily with the help of my therapist, she was like, it usually goes back further. Like, let's
yeah,
keep digging, let's keep working. So now my mind's blown because I have this memory when I was 7, and they or family members around me even said to me the fact that I might need to start watching my weight at the age of
mhm,
7. And it is amazing how something that they might have thought was a throwaway line stuck with
yeah,
me, right?
yeah,
Stuck with me for 30 years and has
yeah,
affected me and has dug its way into my brain. And that is the cycling sentence when I
yeah,
continue to right grow and I age and I'm developing thoughts about myself and I'm trying to create, my own self-esteem and my own self-worth. And you're 13, right? And you're trying to fit into world and you're maybe again not looking like everyone else in your middle school. And I said, it's
right.
okay, it's going to get better. And then high school happens and
And it
high
gets
school is
worse.
right, exactly. And you're just like, oh my gosh. So I think a lot of us, if we start thinking about it, maybe are not even aware that some of these traumatic childhood experiences happened
Absolutely.
when we were much younger than we ever thought was possible. And that's how those thoughts came in and then they just never left, or maybe we never processed them. But as I started digging deeper, there's a huge correlation between childhood trauma and disordered eating, right? And
Absolutely.
some of it is, I think, tied in too with emotional eating or self-soothing or, things like that. So I know personally I was like reading about it. I was like, yes, yes, tick, tick, tick. Like these are me. This is what I'm
Yeah,
fitting into. And then as you age and as you go through all these milestones, right? Middle school, high school, college, med school, like it never got better, even though I wanted
yeah,
to. And there were just more and more traumatic experiences. And
yeah,
I am a emotional eater, right? And I'm a
yeah,
stress eater and I'm a thing. And so then I could just continue to develop these really unhealthy coping patterns that
yeah. So
that are
I was
now,
reading
yeah.
absolutely. I was reading a book recently and they were talking about how addictions form and it could be anything from disordered eating to gambling to alcohol to I mean anything that you can be addicted to was they
Yeah.
were discussing and they were talking about like the brain chemistry behind it and talking about how evolutionarily we have certain biochemical pathways in our brain that try to latch onto certain reward behaviors
Hmm.
and how if you are exposed to a self-soothing mechanism as a child you are more likely to become have an addiction problem with that substance later on whatever it may be and so like they were talking about how like if you have your first drink of alcohol at age 21 you are have a 10% likelihood of becoming an alcoholic later on but if you have your first drink before the age of 13 you have a 15% chance of becoming an alcoholic. So that's like a five-fold difference just from if something that you're exposed to as a self-soothing mechanism in your younger years. And I think that exactly what you're saying, talking about trauma as a young child, I can remember, and I know you didn't go into specifics of your trauma other than that conversation that your family had had, but I mean, I can remember in elementary school being humiliated by a parent intentionally to humiliate me in front of my friends and to alienate me. And at that age, um, I had no exposure to alcohol or to to any of these other things,
Yeah.
but eating was definitely a self-soothing mechanism that I had as a child. And I remember when this event happened that was intended to humiliate and isolate me, and it was intended to like move me, like isolate me away from my group, my basically my class, my whole class. Um, like I didn't have a whole lot of other structure in my life to fall back on to cope with those types of things. Eating had always just been something in our family that we do, like if it's a celebration, you have a meal, and that's the way that we in my family, celebrate.
Right.
And so this was like an ingrained already self-soothing pattern that I had. And then like all of these like relationships that I should have had, that I should have been able to depend on, and that should have been created comfort for me, either my friends at school or a parental relationship. And yet in this event, which was not unfortunately a single occurrence, it was propagated, in each of these scenarios, being completely ripped away from the support structure that you should have as a child.
Mhm.
Um, and so I didn't have those other things, but oh, I still have this food that I have always had.
Right.
And so I developed this, I think, in retrospect, I didn't understand this at the time, but I think that I developed this dopamine seeking behavior as when it comes to food and when it comes to self-soothing with food, which carried on, became so much more extrapolated and exaggerated through medical school when I was so depressed. And as our lives got much more challenging, I continued to fall back on those same behaviors. Even though I technically do drink, and even though technically I am open to drugs, I have never, like, I've never, still to this day, been drunk because I just don't enjoy it. Like I don't get that soothing, I don't get that high from
Mhm.
alcohol or drugs, but I do get a dopamine rush from highly palatable foods. And so I think that that has played into my story of who I am and what my body size is. And I think that's been kind of a recurring theme. And I think exactly what you're saying is 100% true.
Yep. Yeah. It's really hard, I think, because I think it's something that goes unacknowledged for so
Yeah.
long. And maybe because of that, there's people like us out there that are not talking about it until it's
Yeah.
actually brought up, right? And when I was
Until we're in therapy in our 30s.
right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so when I was challenged to kind of think of that, just the episode of like, when is the first time you can remember? It just floored me that I was like, wow, I remember that one time, and that must have been it. I was 7. Um, and it just sticks with you, and then it continues to pile on, and continues to pile on, and then you throw in the emotional eating, right? It's the self-soothing of like, oh, the dopamine hit of like, this will make me feel better, or this will fill the empty spot that I feel inside of
Yeah.
me. And I was confusing emptiness with hunger, right? Um, because I think, they both make you feel full, but
Yeah.
in different
Yeah.
aspects. Um,
Yeah.
and then in order to lose weight, that I'd gone on multiple diets, right, since I was
Mhm.
very young, and it was brought up to me
Yeah.
that you should start restricting. Um,
Right.
then I would restrict, and I might get some um pounds lost, but then because it was so restrictive,
Mhm.
those never go well, right? And then you
Yeah.
would yo-yo back. And so it
Yeah.
continues, or not even continues, it starts a lifelong
Yeah.
process, right? Of
Yeah.
the whole restricting, and then binging, and
Right.
disordered eating, and emotional eating, and not wanting to feel these feelings or emotions because nothing has been, I guess, gained from feeling those feelings, right?
Yeah.
Like other
Yeah.
people have been like, well, that's maybe dismissive, like, oh, that's stupid, you
Right.
shouldn't act that way, or you're too old to act that way. I got that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And that is hard. That is hard to kind of then go back and see. But I feel like if we do not do this hard work and we
Yeah.
do not process this and the trauma we have gone through, we will
Yeah.
continue to live our life the way we have.
Yeah. And processing how to develop better self-soothing habits that are not going to affect your body size and affect your appearance, that in a way that you become consumed, or that it cycles or circles back onto your body image and self-image,
Mhm. Yep,
and kind of
absolutely.
learning to train yourself to replace those healthy habits. And so, which is very challenging because your brain is wired to seek dopamine in this one way, and when you're trying to tell it no, you have to be happy and seek dopamine from this other way, it's really it can be
Yeah,
really challenging, and you're fighting against your brain chemistry, which it can be very, very hard and sometimes not always successful,
right.
which makes this thing, this whole body image, body size, so challenging.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
that's like only the emotional component of it. That has nothing to do with the fact that, like, once you have yo-yo dieted once, um, your metabolism has changed, your the way you process calories, and when you rebound, I mean, all of that gets changed. And so
Exactly.
every single yo-yo, you're like double, like, not only are you working against your emotional health and your brain chemistry, but you're also working against your metabolism, which is now altered permanently. So
Yes. And
it's
imagine doing
yeah,
that at such a young age before I'm even finished developing, right?
yeah,
So this is starting before I even start cycling, right?
yeah,
Before I even start developing, I even go through, and then it continues and it continues until magically 3 years ago. And I know
yeah,
I say magically as in like it was magic. It wasn't. It's hard work, but
yeah,
it has continued into well into my adult years, right?
yeah,
And that is, I think, something that, again, if we don't understand and we do not go back to the root cause, we can be stuck in this cycle, much
yeah,
like yo-yo dieting, right?
yeah,
Because we have done damage before. And if we don't heal that and we don't continue to take care and build from the foundation up, we're building a house of cards and it's going to
yeah,
start tumbling somewhere, right? Which I have done 1.5 million times, which is
yeah,
why I was like, they will fall because they always
yeah,
fall because, you
yeah,
know, but it's sometimes hard, especially I think as an adult, because at this
mhm,
time you feel like, oh, I should have gotten it all figured out by now.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've lived my life, I've done grad school, I've done fellowship, like I've done this.
yeah,
I've lived my life and now I should just have it on autopilot. Well,
yeah,
the problem is that I was not necessarily living it the
yeah,
way that I could be or that is optimizing my health, right?
yeah,
And so then I do have to go back and kind of like relearn and my brain
yeah,
has to rewire. The
yeah,
good news is that your brain can rewire. It's called
yeah,
neuroplasticity, right? The
yeah.
problem is that it won't happen overnight and it
And it's
continues
not
to be
easy.
something, right, that we work on.
Yeah,
Um, but that is sometimes, I think, a point of shame being a
yeah,
physician as an adult, right? And I'm talking to patients and trying to help them on their journey too. In the back of my head, I was like, well, you can't even take care of yourself, right? Why
yeah,
are you trying to take care of other people? What
yeah,
makes you think you're a healer? You have not even healed.
right.
And oof, that hits. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, but I'm like the worst patient. So
yeah,
like I know what I should be doing and I
yeah,
just it really takes the hard work, right? And so that's what I mean. Like in the last 3 years, I've really put in, I think, a lot of work, but I think I've also been seeing the most change in my life, obviously in the last 3 years compared to the 30 years before that. But
yeah.
um
What are some things
but
that you think
yeah.
that, um, that has helped you? Like, what are some tools, that, or even maybe not even specifically tools, but like what are some things that you feel like through examination have helped you to start to mature your thinking and try to heal from this trauma?
Yeah. So, number one, the therapy. I think everyone needs to be in therapy. I think we would all benefit. I think society in general would benefit, right, if we were all in therapy. Um, Sometimes that is not feasible.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have access to mental health care, which is a whole nother episode because it is so
Yes.
unfortunate
Yes.
and so needed.
And the fact that
Um,
it's so cost prohibitive so often.
yes, absolutely. And if you don't have someone, or like you live in a small community and your nearest therapist is, an hour and a half away, and like, so there's so many things wrong, I think, with our healthcare system. But I think that's one of the most beneficial things, is seeking someone else to help me kind of go through this journey of um learning how to talk to myself again, learning how to love myself, which is really
Yeah.
hard, especially when you grow up and there's a lot of, I think, shame and trauma in that, and like self negative talk, like all the time, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you have to learn.
Just like running reel in my head that I had
Yes,
to
yes,
like,
absolutely. And people are like, all the time. And I'm like, all the
all
time,
the time.
in the background, 24/7. And then you pile stuff on top of that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's
and then I kind of do the thing where like that is always going on in my head. And then I notice that every now and then if I like say it out loud and like a joking thing, like making fun of myself, people think it's funny. So
mm,
then I got this like double loop feedback
yes,
that like, that it's positive,
absolutely.
and like it's like this is not good for you.
Yes, yes. Well, and I think that actually goes back to the way that a lot of us were maybe class clowns, right? Because
Yeah,
in order to take away that negative view on myself, I spun it and I'm now trying to be funny, or like I'm
yeah,
trying to be quirky and weird, and like I want attention on me, but I want people to be laughing, right? And
yeah.
like I want, and so I think that's a lot of us too that maybe um went through bullying, right? Or childhood trauma, or was maybe not the most popular kid, like
Yeah.
felt,
Yeah.
right, that self-talk
And if
around that.
I'm feeling insecure about something and I am worried that other people are noticing it, if I make a joke about it out loud, then like I kind of reclaim that,
Absolutely.
and so then you're perpetuating this negative self-talk.
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. And I think through therapy too, I was also learning what, or maybe even learning for the first time, my emotions, right? Because when you are maybe not given the space to learn about your emotions and how to properly go through them or feel your emotions, and what do we do about that, and it's okay if you're sad, or if it's
Right.
okay if you're, angry, or if it's okay if you're stressed, but like, what are we now going to
Process that.
do that, right? How are you going to process that emotionally? How are you going to process that physically? How are you going to process that, right?
Mhm.
um and instead, it was a no, be quiet, feel that for yourself in your own room, in your corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then I was feeding that empty feeling inside because I was
Right.
not able to feel those emotions. So
Right.
that too is where I think learning about my emotions and like recognizing them, because instead of now blindlessly eating my emotions away, it's more of a no, sit and like sit in here and maybe journal about it, right? So journal is a great thing that, I was going to say, takes no money, but it costs the amount of dollars for a pen and a piece of paper, right? But um it has a
Or
lot.
maybe not. Like maybe your cell phone that you already have, you pull out a notepad on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I guess I could say
But
that's cell phone cost, but anyway.
But starting to process those emotions in a physical way, not just thinking about them, is like writing them out of, I am feeling this way. Why do I feel this way? And you start actually going through that process. I had to learn that, oh, I am stressed. I am
Yeah.
stressed because of this. This is how it makes my body feel. My first reaction is to obviously eat, but instead of
Right.
that, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then I journal about, okay, that helped or it didn't help. Like going for a walk helped a little bit, but I really wish I brought my headphones with me because I got really bored of my walk, right? And so as you're processing through not only your emotions, but you're processing through things that are going to help you in the future when you go back and you're like, oh yeah, that thing really helped. Like going for a
Yeah.
hike really helped. Going for maybe a run in the rain didn't because I was so upset about the rain
Cold
that
and
like, you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like it just
Cold, and then I got back to the place, and then I was even worse. I was even more grouchy or
yeah,
grumpy or
now I'm
sad or
upset.
whatever.
I look like a brown rat and I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like whatever. And so then you go, yeah, the walking is great if the weather's okay. Like if
Right.
not,
What do we do?
yeah, do something else. Do and then I went through so many things. I bought so many coloring books. I bought crochet hooks and
Yeah.
yarn. Bought
Yeah.
those little those little mats that you put the shiny
Oh,
rhinestones in a certain
yeah.
pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
I have done everything. I've painted rocks. Like I've been there and done that. But I feel like that's a lot of the process that we have, those of us that are in the boat, right, that we really need to connect to ourselves and our emotions and learn different avenues of feeling
Mm,
those emotions besides that disordered eating that my brain wants to loop back to, because you know what, that highly palatable food
yeah.
just just
Hijacked.
oh,
Yeah.
right, it just explodes in my brain and my brain goes, yes, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's so good, she did it.
Dopamine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then I understand
Yeah.
why people that enjoy drugs do drugs, right? Or people that enjoy alcohol, right? Because to me, that is food. And then I go, oh my gosh, yay. And then, right, I feel a little full and I can take a nap. And then I can
Yeah.
ignore my
Yeah.
feelings,
And then you
right?
wake up and you're hungry again. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I think the other feeling too that kind of goes with that, really don't know the chicken or the egg, is going to be my depression and anxiety, right? Because I'm trying to feed myself, right? And like feed my emotions that I can't really understand because I'm a young, you know what I mean? And I'm feeding myself
Right.
this not so nutritious food. I don't want to call it bad because we're not, right? It's
Right.
not bad. It's
Not
just food.
moral. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not as nutritious as I could have done. But that's
Yeah.
what you're craving, right? Because it hits
Right.
again. I want fireworks in my brain.
Right.
Um, but the same food that gives me fireworks in my brain causes my depression and anxiety to become worse. And
Yeah.
because my depression and anxiety gets worse, I continue to crave and continue to seek
Yeah.
out those firework foods.
Yeah.
So it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And so that also plays into it too, which is I don't understand how to feel my feelings or what they are, but I do know that the bad feelings are happening more often, and I truly don't know how to take care of them, right?
Well, and that's the thing that I think is, and I'm going to sound like a broken record saying this, but that I think is so magic about GLP-1s
Mhm,
because like we've talked about the emotional work that you have to do when you face these, struggles.
mhm,
The GLP-1 medicines come along beside them and they say, look, we're going to break that dopamine seeking trigger that you
mhm,
have, and we're going to separate the reward from the craving. And that just does so much help. Like, so yes, you still have to do all the emotional trauma work, but it also helps to take away the physical seeking
mhm.
that happens. And so if you can work on both of those fronts, I mean, you can really make tons and tons of progress, exponentially faster than we would have ever been able to do before them. And
Right.
so I think, I know that I feel like I'm going to sound like a GLP-1 pusher, but I really think that they have changed the landscape. And I think that um, when we're talking about this, for those who struggle with disordered eating, having a GLP-1, and by disordered eating, I mean someone who tends to overeat and emotional eat. I do not mean someone who has a pattern of restricting,
Right.
because obviously a GLP-1 in that situation could be catastrophic.
Yes.
But for those of us who have this um, dopamine seeking behavior as associated with foods, especially highly palatable foods, it really makes a difference and can help. It does not cure you, but it can help come along this path and along this struggle to really um, help your journey. I don't even know how to say. I can't even put into words.
Yeah. So I think what's
Um,
amazing is, and I never heard this term before, but a lot of people are associating these GLP-1s with lowering food noise.
yeah,
And as soon as I heard that term, I knew
yeah,
exactly what they were
exactly what they're
talking
talking about.
about, because I
Yeah,
was like, yes,
yeah,
that is what's happening. It's literally the noise that's happening in my
yeah,
brain all the time,
all the time.
seeking the firework
Yeah,
foods,
yeah,
because that's what happens.
yeah,
And so absolutely, it's one of the medications, and probably the one with the most promise so far. But I think
mhm,
that's also why we're going to see a lot of different studies come out in the future associating decreased addiction seeking behavior
yeah,
or pleasure seeking
yeah,
behaviors with patients that are on GLP-1.
yeah.
Um,
And those studies are coming out.
mhm.
Yeah,
So that'll be really interesting because we know, I mean, it hits the brain and the gut. But so many people have been concentrating on the gut. But I'm like, listen, it's changing
yeah,
brains and it's
it's the
changing
brain.
the way that people are. Yeah.
Maybe
Um,
that should be our next science minute is talking about the GLP-1s and these other
yes,
other
yes.
effects.
Absolutely, because I think, especially, I mean, if you have not heard the word or the term food noise, and
Yeah,
if that totally highlights with you, then yes, the science corner will
yeah,
be like, let's talk about this. This is what we're talking about, and this is the medicine behind it, and this is why it works, and these are the receptors it's hitting, etc. So yeah, not that. Yeah, I don't think the medicine is gonna be 100% for everyone, but if it could
no,
be a tool, like, we use so many tools in medicine,
yeah,
right? And a lot of times, one is not enough. One tool
absolutely.
sometimes is hardly ever enough, and so that's when we take a
We don't
step.
have one single blood pressure medicine. We have lots of blood
Right.
pressure medicines because they hit different targets.
Yes, yes, depending on what you need as an individual, and, but a lot of this will be mental health. A lot of this
Mhm.
will be nutrition education. A lot of this will be lifestyle change. A lot of this will be learning what exercise makes you feel good because the
Yeah,
exercise releases endorphins. I don't exercise to lose weight.
yeah,
Exercise so those depression and anxiety feelings in my
yeah,
head don't hang
yeah.
around as long, right?
And if
Um,
you hate running and you try to make yourself go run, that is not going to hit those dopamine
right.
receptors, those endorphins.
Yes, absolutely. Oh gosh. I remember so many other sports and I'm like, I don't know why people do this. And then
Yeah.
you meet a fanatic and they're like, this is what I do 4 times a week. And I'm like,
And
whoa,
you're
I'm
like, who are you?
so
What is
excited for
this?
you. But yeah, you gotta find that thing. But that's what's nice too, I think, is there's so many options for exercise or movement that your body enjoys, whether that's taking up a new dance class
Yeah,
or just putting on a YouTube exercise channel and
yeah,
doing that because now there's so many available,
yeah,
um, that you don't have to go to a class. And especially for the rural community, right? Like if you don't have access to a massive gym or like people
yeah,
doing these exercise classes, you can find them online for free and do
yeah,
those. Takes a little bit of discipline because if you're anything like me, if no one's expecting me in their class, like, I don't know if I miss a YouTube
yeah,
workout, but
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's a whole nother thing that you'll talk to your therapist about or journal about, right? So, but yeah,
I think this was a good place to kind of put a pause on this. And then maybe in our next episode, will kind of talk about these traumas and how they manifested as adults and how we dealt with them and or experienced them and kind of go through our experiences as adults. But we are running a little long here. So maybe we'll put a pause on it here and get started with our next episode on that.
excellent, excellent. Well, thanks for watching the clock, Dr. Sarah. We'll be back next time with part two. So send us any comments or questions, or maybe even share your stories if you feel like it. But we'll see you next time.